title default is Debunking the Fake Far Left with Aaron Mate, and I don't even have to change the title this week.
I feel like I was fooled. I don't know. I was just like randomly reading some Aaron Mate tweets over the past week, and it's very apparent that he's a fucking Russian toady, isn't he?
Lackey. What did Putin call him?
Yeah.
Did you watch the Putin speech a couple days ago?
I've watched everything. There is nothing I've watched at least 8 hours of live footage from Kiev every day for the past 4 days.
Jesus Christ, son.
Slava Ukraini. The ghost of Kiev be with you.
Do you know who Anders Breivik is?
I do, yeah.
I started a biography of him this week, and so far it is horrific. I don't know if you know about this story. He came up for parole last year because in Norway, like, the maximum prison sentence is 21 years. In 10 years, you're eligible for parole. So he came up for parole. This guy is so crazy. He shows up in court and throws up a Heil Hitler at the parole meeting. Could you imagine? You ever been to a parole office meeting? Like a parole hearing?
Yeah, that's what he got that from me. That was my go-to move.
Terrible idea.
Whenever I went up for parole, just give him the old Heil Hitler. And
if you throw up a Heil Hitler, you're probably not getting parole, man.
Like
killed 77 people in Norway, dude. A summer camp. This youth summer camp for the Labor Party youth was on this island, and he gunned them all down.
It's called being an overachiever. Yeah, I mean that was the old Manson go-to, right? Like show up to your parole board hearings with the swastika carved in your forehead, or
well, you can play it off. You can be like, "Well, I got drunk, shit happens."
Yeah. Drank some toilet wine and got drunk. Me and the boys.
Well, I want to talk about, first of all, there is more censorship going on in this country. I know Joe Rogan's been censored, and Jordan Peterson's been censored. People like that, that's even Dave Chappelle was censored.
Obviously,
I heard he got 6 more Netflix specials. Is that true?
I know he got signed on for some more Netflix specials. I don't know the number.
Thought he said he was done, dude.
No. He said he was done talking about trans issues and talking about those issues.
Wasn't his special called like the final special or something like? What was it called?
Closer.
Yeah.
The closer. Yeah.
Anyway, the real target this time is talking about gay stuff to children, I guess, is being banned in Florida. It looks like it's going through the House. This will get passed. I'm sure DeSantis will sign it,
Signaled his support for this bill. Tell us what he has said about it and why he thinks that this is a good idea.
Lindsay, it was here in Miami where the governor did express his support for this bill. At least he signaled his support for it. He said in part that it was entirely inappropriate for teachers to be having conversations with students about gender identity. He goes on claiming that there have been instances where students have been told by different folks not to worry about picking their gender yet and then not telling their parents about these discussions. Finally, he said that the larger issue here is that parents need to have a seat at the table when it comes to what's going on in schools. Lindsay?
And of course, the backlash to this bill has been strong and swift. In a tweet, President Biden called it hateful, and advocates say that it could effectively ban all lessons about LGBTQ plus issues.
Yeah, that's the goal of it, I think. So this is sort of a continuation of the James Lindsay CRT bills that basically what they do is they make it a fireable offense if a teacher's teaching this stuff, essentially is what the bills do. And this is a bill being passed in Florida that will ban speaking about gender issues. For example, transgender, even homosexuality as a concept can't be taught. What's your opinion of bills like this?
I mean, it all falls part and parcel with the conservative playbook of just controlling the narrative. It's all messed up, but it makes sense for the kind of the conservative, I guess, their goals, what they're trying to achieve by not teaching, I don't know, I guess the more the civil rights stuff and kind of glorifying America, not teaching about the Trail of Tears, stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I think this is
different than that, though. I think this is different because
it definitely is different, but I don't know why. Like I don't even know this. This is like pandering to a demographic that barely exists. It feels like it's kind of along the same vein of them just wanting to control the narrative and wanting to just be really selective in what students are taught by not teaching them things that are kind of pertinent and the relevant bits of information that anybody in a modern society should know about. We should know about the what we've done in the past. We should know about different sexual orientations of individuals. We should know about the struggles of different marginalized groups. I don't know. I mean, it's just it feels like this is just appealing to a select group of bigots in their voter base, and I don't know what else. I really don't know what else it would be there for.
I think, for one, you're underestimating how many people that is probably concerned parents, right? It's the whole white sort of middle class demographic. I think, especially in a place like Florida, a pretty conservative place. I think what a trans person would say. Obviously, I'm not a trans person, but if I could speak for him here for a second, it seems like this would be considered the type of thing that is dangerous because it's going to further stigmatize trans people and gay people, and in particular, like young kids who may be trans or whatever. They're going to not be able to come out, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it's this is something we've talked about in the past, having to do with race, but what I thought of a kind of a multicultural, holistic, modern society is we kind of break down these barriers and we just accept that people are different in different ways. They have different races, skin tones, sexualities, orientations, and that you just kind of don't. You accept it as just something that these are differences between people, and then just move on with it. But
seems like
and kind of like putting it and making it something that's not taught about, and
we don't talk about those people.
Yeah, and just like it's the other.
They're not like you.
Of certain groups of people, and it's kind of, I mean, it's completely antithetical.
Go beat the shit out of them real quick.
Yeah, it's really just it's antithetical to having kind of that melting pot, kind of homogenizing society. I guess it's a false homogenization. Looks like a brigantine battle map.
So,
Yep.
What do you know about Brigantine? What a fantastic
game. I love that game. I love that game. You played the hexagons. Looks like it looks like the map.
Phenomenal. Wyverns and shit.
It's phenomenal. I think I actually ended up with your old game. I stole it.
So, light green, no restrictions on critical race theory being taught in school. The blue is where laws are currently in the process of getting passed. The dark blue. The light blue is where they've already been banned. So I know we were talking not that long ago about this topic, and we had mentioned it was a couple states, but it looks pretty widespread. This is a national project the GOP have been on for a while now, led by people like James Lindsay. And the next step is these gay bans, these Don't Say Gay bills. I did want to point out that Russia has already done this. They did this in 2013. They called it the Gay Propaganda Bill, the stated goal of which was to protect children from homosexuality and other non-traditional sexual relationships. And it received criticism at the time. But yeah, we're a little behind the right-wing shift, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, maybe I would be surprised if polling of the people that vote Republican, I'd be surprised if more than half of them were averse to like homosexuality. Just not it being taught, but just the fact that some people are gay being taught.
I agree.
I'd be surprised if you know, obviously with trans people it'd probably be a bit more. But yeah, I mean.
But the difference is they have these internal biases that they are bigoted, and you know it's not a part of their conscious, you know, ethical system, but they are bigoted. They believe these are lesser people, or this is some sort of disease or whatever. At least on some level, you know. Now they'll probably not say that they would want to do something bad to them, but the end result of these sorts of policies is just a general sentiment against minorities.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think nobody's proposing like any legislation. I don't think against the actual people. It's just about, I guess, at what age these concepts are introduced to children. But yeah, I still don't know what's the political, what you're expecting politically from doing this, other than just getting a handful of votes from people that were going to vote for you anyways. That's
I'll
what
tell
I don't
you exactly
get about
why. I'll explain it.
Okay.
This is. I want to make this very clear for people. This is exactly what these bills do. This is a broad ban up to the interpretation of whichever judge hears the case, assuming the teacher who's been fired has the funds to sue the state. So it basically gives the state power to fire whichever teachers they have deemed to have said something that violates this ban. So in other words, they can in a politically motivated way, fire teachers they dislike. That's exactly what this does. Look at Jordan Peterson with his conflagration of postmodernism and neo-Marxism and all these different left. This is all Marxism. It's all the same. It's all Marxism, right? It's all one thing.
So, does this is this bill perhaps to open the door to kicking out teachers that aren't teaching, like not necessarily about this, but it opens the door to where they can be kicked out for other things under the guise of, well, they said something about gay people or they mentioned that trans people exist. I mean, it's just... This
is a new type of McCarthyism. This is exactly what it is. It's a way that they are gaining political power. They've decided to go this sort of more municipal direction as far as their politics, and it's probably going to be very effective for them. It's what, you know, the left should have been doing the whole time, just not as well funded.
Yeah, I mean,
they have tried to do it. You know, they've done it, you know, in New York and whatnot. But
well, sure. I mean, these state level appealing to social conservative political movements in schools. I mean, this is going back, you know, to the Scopes monkey trial 100 years ago. You know, when evolution and creationism were kind of the hot button issues. I mean, I guess.
Were they firing teachers over that?
I imagine it would. What's that?
Were they firing teachers over that?
Oh, yeah, that's what the Scopes monkey trial was about. They were
so long.
They were. Well, I mean, yeah. I think it was 1920. So it has been a bit
since I read about it. Is what I mean.
Okay. Yeah. So
many years since school.
It's been a while since the 1920s. I think in that particular case, the teacher was what was his name? Scopes, obviously. Yeah, Scopes was fined X amount of dollars by I think it was Tennessee. Yeah, some school board in Tennessee, but it was a big push to kind of rally support amongst Christian social conservatives. It worked, I guess, for a long time, and it certainly. Even if the legislation doesn't work, obviously with the evolution creationism thing, it got overturned and the science ended up winning out. But as an issue that would galvanize support, you know, I mean, it's still hanging in there. And I guess this is like kind of the newest iteration of it.
That sounds like you're talking about a Supreme Court case. The problem is the Supreme Court now is not going to strike any of this down. You know, this is all part of the project.
Well, they've learned from their mistakes then, I guess.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in nootropics, check out my website, MetamaxPerformance.com. We have 10% off for winter sale still going on, so check it out. Get your new Tropics while you can. MetaMaxPerformance.com.
Gentle listeners, Shire Hemp Farms is your #1 source for CBD and Delta 8 products. Check us out now for wholesale pricing on Delta 8 carts. We have some new Delta 8 in with new American-made carts. Always the lowest price. Check us out. Support local Kentucky farms, local Kentucky businesses. ShireHempFarms.com.
Instead of that silky smooth voice.
I was trying to do the NPR. Okay.
Well, I am wearing my Che Guevara shirt today in solidarity with the Russian protesters being arrested for protesting the war.
I'm wearing my Chris Farley shirt, living in a van down by the river.
No fear, man. No fear of these guys. The Russian protesters.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
In Russia, they'll arrest you, but they also might just beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, they've been doing both. I think as of today, they've completely blocked off the area around the Kremlin where a lot of these larger protests are being held. Putin, being a man of science and the man of the people that he is, he was very concerned about the spread of COVID, so he has blocked all demonstrations from happening for fear.
Oh, I hadn't heard
population, that. Yeah, for fear of the population being ravaged by coronavirus. So it's good to know he's out there looking out for the Russian people. But
he was spraying them with water cannons. It's pretty cold out there in Russia, man.
But yeah, they're still out there. It's been pretty amazing, just worldwide, to see the number of people out demonstrating on behalf of the Ukrainian people in Russia and Belarus, Germany. There was a demonstration in Louisville last night. I would have went had I not found out about it an hour after it happened. But yeah, they had one up on the Big Four Bridge. Had the bridge lit up in the Ukrainian colors.
All right. Here's Aaron Mate's Twitter feed. You want to start off with a bad take, I guess?
Always.
We've been on the Aaron Mate is a turd train for a while, man, haven't we?
Well, you have. I was not. I was foolishly. I was only familiar with him, kind of in certain contexts through certain things that he said, and there was a lot of context about his background, about other things that he said that I was just not aware of. And you were trying to explain to me that, no, he's a bad actor, Tony. And I was like, I don't know. I think those damn liberals just going too far, trying to throw the blame game around. And I am a believer now. I think Aaron Mate is literally a tool. It just happens to be a tool of Putin.
One of the silver linings of this whole thing is exposing all of the actual real Marxist-Leninist revolutionaries from the pro-imperialist Russian state puppets, basically. What did Putin call? I asked you this earlier. I can't recall. He had a term he used in his speech. Vassals. His vassals. I was like, that's a very Russian term I haven't heard in a while.
It works.
Putin is a very effective. I love listening to Putin, dude. His interviews are always good. I found a documentary I haven't seen of his yet. Oliver Stone, the Oliver Stone documentary. It's on Showtime. I'll have to check that out later.
Oh, yeah, send it to me. Incidentally, there's also a video of him singing a Fats Domino song I listened to earlier.
Fuck.
I think it was on r/cringe.
All right, here's Aaron Mate's tweet. Milquetoast leftist chauvinism means whitewashing 8 years of a proxy war that began with a U.S.-backed coup and was since fueled by billions in U.S. weapons, and then scolding those who dare point out that the U.S. had some, quote, agency in the events. 1,200 likes. Not as high as normally his tweets would get.
Yeah. What's that even supposed to mean?
Well, he's talking about Yanukovych, right?
Yeah.
The Maidan revolution and all that. He's calling this the Russians, they call this a coup because the guy was a pro-Russian.
Yeah, so I guess that's what it comes
coup,
down to. I mean, it kind of is a proxy war in that we're supporting, there's been armed conflict between Ukraine and Russia for, quite some time now. And we are, we're not supporting them because we just love democracy and sovereignty. We're supporting them because they're, Western aligned. So I don't know. I mean, what's the definition of proxy war? Like, it's kind of it, right? Supporting someone else's war against someone who's our enemy.
Well, proxy war means we have troops there. We don't have troops there.
No, I don't think that's what proxy war. You're fighting a war by proxy, right?
Right. But who's our proxy?
It's not. Our proxy is Ukraine.
The Ukrainians aren't really proxies of the Americans, though. That's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, it is a bit of a stretch. But I'm just.
There's no advisors. There's no special forces.
Sure.
There's no U.S.-made M16s. It's all Russian weapons.
Okay, sure.
Nobody has more. I mean, I think I have the point listed here. The idea that the U.S. has more influence in Ukraine than Russia, it's very unequal distribution of power in that relationship. And even Germany has way more influence in Ukraine. The European Union has, the United States has very little influence in Eastern Europe compared to people like Germany or Russia.
Actually, to be fair, I've heard it said a couple times over the past week that we did have Hunter Biden over there. So maybe he's the U.S. proxy that's directing things.
He's probably working for Russia, dude. To get another rock.
Oh, my God.
I'll give you the secrets.
I would, too, honestly. I've seen those prostitutes. They look beautiful.
Man.
God, I'd kill myself. Anyways.
I wanted to touch on the Yanukovych thing. This is what they're hanging their hats on, this U.S.-backed coup. The U.S. certainly backed it from a moral sense, but there wasn't much material support for the Maidan protesters. There are some points about Yanukovych himself here. Technically, he was democratically elected. He ran, this is, I believe, his third term we're talking about here. He ran on joining the EU. That was his promise, his campaign promise, and he backed out of the negotiations at the last minute because he wanted to join the Russian trading bloc. He, some points against him here, he used snipers on the protesters. It was the Ukrainian special forces, the evidence points to, for being the ones who fired on the protesters. Now, who knows if those were acting on direct orders of Yanukovych? Who knows? I would probably guess yes, or Putin himself even. He also poisoned his political running mate, potentially. Him or Putin, one of the two.
Yeah, I think it's also, I guess, important to point out the during that revolution, so that keeps getting pointed out that we backed it's Maidan, is that the pronunciation?
Yeah,
Maidan, the Maidan revolution, but it wasn't. We weren't backing a small sect of Western partisans that took over the government. It had popular support. It was a widely popular movement that overthrew a essentially Russian client regime that didn't have the same popular support that the government ended up having. The Maidan government ended up having. The people like Aaron Mate are trying to make analogies between the Maidan Revolution, or there's another one, the Revolution of Dignity, I think. It's easier for me to say. Revolution of Dignity and, what's going on in eastern Ukraine. That maybe might be more analogous, but I guess the point is that we were supporting a revolution that was, that did have popular support. It wasn't a coup by a small group of people that took power. It was overthrowing the small group of people that didn't have popular support, that were controlled by that basically was a puppet government, in favor of a popular government.
So what you're saying is the characterization of a coup is a very dubious characterization. It doesn't really hold up to scrutiny.
Yeah.
Another thing that Yanukovych or Putin, I'm not sure which, probably Yanukovych, he poisoned his running mate here, Viktor Yushchenko, allegedly. When I arrived home and kissed my wife, she said I tasted metallic. He was poisoned in 2004 when running against Yanukovych.
He'd been eating ass before he got home.
Let me show you his face before and after. He had a normal face before, now he's all scarred up. This is while he was poisoned. His skin grew these growths to try and create more white blood cell tissue to cleanse the toxin. So he had all these, his whole body swelled up and stuff, but he survived.
I don't know. I mean,
who would do something like that?
Certainly not Putin.
No.
If there's anything he's known for, it's good, clean political maneuvering and respect for your running mates.
You know, I wonder how many people Putin himself has poisoned.
Anyway, you declare the war. It is the responsibility of this body to
This
stop
guy's a
the
gangster,
war.
dude.
Oh, yeah.
Ukraine ambassador to the UN.
So I call on every one of you to do everything possible to stop the war.
This isn't called a war. This is called a special military operation in the Donbass.
Relinquish your duties as a chair. Call Putin, call Lavrov to stop aggression. And I welcome the decision of some members of this council to meet
some members
to consider the necessary decision. That would
He's legit
condemn the
pissed.
aggression
He's not just some shitty
you
politician.
launch
Like,
on
he's
my
invested.
people. There is no purgatory for war criminals. They go straight to hell, Ambassador.
Mic drop.
No purgatory for war criminals. They go straight to hell.
Yeah, that's pretty epic, dude.
Yeah, that was great.
What else this week?
Jesus. And that was, so this was right after, so he started this speech. I watched this actually live. He started the speech, and during the speech, he got handed somebody come and told him basically that the invasion actually happened. This was right after the Donetsk and Luhansk and kind of the breakaway countries, and Putin moved his troops in to support them, and that was the context that he started everything off in. And I don't know, it would just be wild to be out there, and get as he's giving the speech, he got the information. No, the full-fledged invasion has happened. Shit's going down. And he really, he changed his tone and started calling it an invasion and called the Russian delegate out. I wish it shown the whole thing, but he called him out
I watched it.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I kept expecting the Russian Federation delegate to just pull out a pistol and shoot the guy. What do you think about Vosh pretending Ukraine is going to win this thing and hyping up Ukraine, being very overly optimistic, not showing doomer stuff?
I think so. I've watched a lot of Vosh over the past few days. I think he would say that, militarily, Ukraine is not going to hold up to Russia, most likely. Now, if things did continue going the way things have gone, it's possible. It could be that everyone, that Russia is a paper tiger. Everyone's vastly overestimated their ability, and they've kind of, botched this entire thing, the entire invasion. Logistics seems to be a nightmare. Morale seems to be just, non-existent amongst the troops. But on top of that, the amount of international pressure that has mounted and the degree to which the sanctions seem to be really hitting home and doing what they're supposed to against the Russian economy. It's very probable that Russia's they're just not going to be able to continue this offensive, that something's going to have to break. And it just seems every bad thing is going against Russia. Everything has mounted up against this offensive, against the Putin government in general. And, it's very possible that Ukraine could hold out long enough to where some sort of agreement ends up being made that Putin has to back off. I cannot imagine that Putin expected things to go the way that they're going. I cannot imagine he expected Germany to drop its neutrality and to start supplying troops and to allow the EU to supply not troops, but supplying weapons and gear, which allows the EU to start supplying weapons to Ukraine. I don't think he expected China, who originally was kind of tacitly not agreeing with it, but was kind of towing the line of Russia that, this is not an invasion. We're going to maintain. We're actually going to step up some of the trade agreements that we have with Russia, and now they've kind of stepped away, and they're just trying to distance themselves from the Putin government. The leader, I think it was of the Donetsk region, so this new breakaway republic of Donetsk that Putin just propped up from some separatist who is the new leader of this country, he come out and made a statement against Russia, saying, we undertook this whole thing we undertook this project of breaking away from Ukraine with Russia to expecting Russia to be a shield against Ukraine, not for Russia to bomb Kiev. It's nothing set in stone, and tonight's going to be I guess, an important night for how well Ukraine fares in this, but it seems like the tide is turning, at least from what I've seen and, my armchair generaling this whole thing. It seems like the doomerism from 3 or 4 days ago of the Russians are on the doorstep of Kiev, they've taken the airports, they're moving troops in. It's really subsiding, and there seems to be some serious glimmers of hope. But yeah,
you seem very optimistic to me. You seem like very. All your facts are correct, but I think your interpretation is very optimistic.
All right, so I'm not necessarily. I am optimistic. Well, yeah, I think I'm optimistic. I think that there is a good chance that the Zelensky government, the Zelensky government endures, and the Russian offensive goes away. Now, whether or not parts of Ukraine end up becoming parts of Russia or not, and of course the big wild card here is Putin and just how completely erratic and irrational and
debatable,
outside of the norm of anything that makes sense. Just how he's acting, there's. I don't know. I mean, we're in a global economy, and as much as Putin has tried to set aside a war chest to be able to do this, I think it's gotten hit, and his ability to continue to wage this war is taking some serious hits.
That's the first part I disagree with. There's there's nothing that's stopping him from continuing to wage the war.
Tell me why I should cry.
I mean,
because I'm all on board. I'm swinging on Zelensky's nuts.
They said 2 days ago that Putin had only deployed 10% of his troops. That was the initial push to try and get a surrender. He didn't get the surrender, but he had 90% of his forces on the border. They've now crossed over. They're headed towards Kiev. There were satellite photos, if you saw from, I forget where I saw it from, but it had
the
3 miles worth of heavy artillery stationed outside Kiev. Simultaneous with these talks, that everything kind of hinges on the talks. If basically Putin demands another surrender, then we're back on, and then Kiev is going to get destroyed. They've barely used any offensive military capabilities. They have tons of Stinger missiles they haven't used. They have tons of they have all kinds of technologies they have not deployed yet. They have been pretty cautious, actually, Russia has during the invasion, trying not to just obliterate everything, obviously, because they want to annex it. They want, Putin wants it annexed.
For sure. So that was something I'd kind of initially expected. I think with a lot of other people was just, the term shock and awe kept getting thrown around. Expect this overwhelming display of firepower and, this blitzkrieg of Kiev. And as somebody that I've been watching the live feed, it was surprising how little action was happening. You'd occasionally hear some gunfire, some artillery fire, a bombing here and there, but he's not wanting to conquer the people just to conquer the people. He wants to take Ukraine as whole as possible and add it to Russia's economic force, and you can't do that if you just obliterate everything, and if you the more devastation you bring to the people. I mean, that's the big thing, obviously, that everybody keeps talking about. Taking over the country is one thing. Holding the country is another thing. And if you just really devastate and kill a lot of people, as America will tell you, it's really hard to maintain an occupation in a country that's just not feeling you.
Well, I don't think that's his intention. What he laid out his intention, he wants to, or maybe I think it was the UK intelligence that leaked this, that he wants to force the Ukrainian government to sign basically pro-Russia deals. He wants to basically turn it into a vassal state, I believe is what he said.
Yeah, well, sure. I don't think the Zelensky government is gonna sign anything, and so this is where it really gets into the nuance. Like, he can install his own head of government that will sign these deals with him, and then what kind of popular support is that government going to have? How much propping up? How much?
Plenty. After RT gets in there and starts circulating Russian media.
It's not working in Russia anymore. The internet's available to everybody, and it's way harder to censor. I mean, this is the big problem with what he has going on right now. He's got RT and he's got the television channels on lockdown, except for when anonymous randomly starts broadcasting Ukrainian propaganda on Russian TV channels. But it's the internet, man. You can't censor it, and all the information gets out on that. And even then, the people that are in Ukraine, they're going to know if they start getting Russian TV or Russian stations on their TV, like they know. They just went through this whole thing. They've been in contact with the whole world. Everyone's reaching out to them.
As well as I do, dude. Most people don't care about politics. Their life's not going to substantially change, really. They're not going to care what the formation of the parliament is in their government. Most people don't give a shit.
I don't know, man. I could not. Most people don't give a shit.
Now, if Russia goes in there and starts mass murdering people, then they'll give a shit,
This is going to be the most broadcast, most widely reported, the most well-known conflict in history, hands down. I can't imagine that what the Ukrainian people going through right now is not going to have it's not going to be seared into their brain. It's not going to have this incredible lasting effect on how they feel about their own internal politics. And I just don't see a pro-Russian government being able to come in and up their food stamps by a little bit, give them some social programs while they give away the $1 trillion worth of natural gas off Crimea. Is just give that to Russia. I don't know. I don't see that happening at all. This seems like, there was a poll just come out the other day, like Zelensky's approval is like over 90% now.
Approval polls are pretty misleading. They don't really reflect people's actual ability to pick up arms against, for example, a new government. There is fairly hefty percentage of I mean, Yanukovych won the election. There is a sizable portion of pro-Russian people in Ukraine. There are a lot of neo-Nazis and adjacent folks like that. I know this point has been sort of debunked, but if you watch the footage of, you can just literally watch the footage of the people making Molotov cocktails and shit. A bunch of them have SS's on their fucking shirts and shit. I mean, you can say there's not that many all day, but if you can see them in the crowd, it's kind of like, wow. It's not just Ukraine. That's Europe in general. There are just a lot of that persuasion in all countries.
Sure.
Even Norway, as I'm learning.
The international pressure that has, I kind of went over this a little bit already, but the international pressure against Russia, I think, is just going to be, is going to make continuing to push this war just completely untenable.
What pressure, though? I mean, he can finish the war, and then he doesn't care. There's all this talk that he's potentially dying, right? So he's working on his legacy now.
Oh, I don't give that any stock whatsoever. I don't think it matters. I think
he can still sell his oil. That's the only thing that he really needs.
He can sell it to a handful of people, maybe. I mean, but if everything else is cut off, you know, what's he
can still sell to Germany? Germany hasn't cut off his oil exports. They cut a few banks out of SWIFT. They didn't cut off the petroleum banks.
Yeah, I think that's coming. I think it's, you know, they're slowly ratcheting
40%
this
of their
up.
oil from Russia.
Germany is supplying. They just finally today broke their neutrality, and they're supplying troops or supplying arms to Ukraine. So there are 100,000 people.
Bro, that's
demonstrating.
Bad.
There are 100,000 people demonstrating in Berlin against the German government's, attempted neutrality and attempting to kind of
the history of Germany and Russia, right? This is bad, dude. This is bad news. I don't like the idea of Germany getting involved whatsoever. They had a major role in Yugoslavia, dude.
Yeah,
there's a lot of history there.
Look, and not to mention, Germany has just passed what was it? They're, I think, basically doubling their military spending over the next however many years.
Tripling.
So maybe it was tripling. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, if there's anything that gives me hope, it's that Germany's rearming. It's never been a bad thing.
What's the worst that could happen? I mean,
what's the worst that could happen? Watch out, Poland. Be careful.
Watch out, Zelensky and all the other Jews out there, man.
But Turkey, and that's the thing. Like maybe
Turkey blocking off the Black Sea, yeah.
They closed the Bosphorus for them.
That's bad too.
France stopping Russian ships and bringing them into port that are transporting goods. And sure, there's plenty of places China will buy his oil. Assad will buy his oil. There are plenty of people that will buy the oil from him, but what's he going to spend it on? What's he going to buy? He can still buy stuff from China, maybe. I don't think, China doesn't care about the international pressure against their dealings with North Korea. I don't think they're going to care about the international pressure of their dealings with Russia, but, trade with the entire EU, trade with the U.S., what he buys with that oil money from those countries is what he's using to build the first world nation that he's trying to build.
I don't think he cares about the oil. The oil industry is on its way out. He's concerned with the future, man. He's concerned about the glory of the motherland. He's freaking Putin, dude.
Well, and so that's the big, for me, that's the big kind of wild card here is he just kind of outright made the blood and soul speech. There was a couple little bones to pretext for why the war was necessary. I think he kind of did a wink and a nod to the U.S. and saying, they might be developing WMDs and what else? Yeah, and then just keeps referring to it as a military action, which is exactly what we did in Iraq. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's scary because it's just completely masked off, and he's dropped off pretext. he's going in there, just on the kind of blood and soul. I need to reforge the Soviet Empire, the Russian Empire. This is our birthright. This is our land, our people, our blood. And
I think
that kind of unhinged language that doesn't belong in this century. I think really I think it kind of speaks to where he's at as a leader, and it's just kind of in a bad place. He's talking like a early 20th century dictator, not a 21st century developed country ruler.
I don't get that sense. I thought his speech was it wasn't measured. It was very frank and earnest. And I appreciate that about a politician. Honestly, he's right about a lot of his history, and he's bitter, man. He's very bitter that Russia is in the position they're in globally. Moving forward, even their main export is on its way out. He knows all this. He's not stupid, man. And as far as I can understand his perspective, right? I don't agree with it, but I can understand where he's coming from. And what I mean to say by that is he doesn't seem like an unrational actor. It doesn't seem like he has never spoken about a first strike potential. He's always spoken about nukes defensively. Now, with that said, he has the largest nuclear stockpile on the earth. And if he gets I feel like this crisis he can't come out of without some kind of concessions. He has to get something out of it, or he is in such a bad position, both domestically and internationally. You know what I mean?
I think he's in a terrible position domestically and internationally. But
that's not necessarily a good thing.
No, it's not. That's the scary part about it. It's kind of the caged animal, and if him losing outright, it really is kind of off the table, because his government, I can't imagine it lasting. I can't imagine him being able to stay in power if he has to pull back troops, tail between his legs, and go back and try to explain this to everybody.
There's no chance of that. You don't understand the sort of military might that he can bring to bear if he has to, even non-nuclear might.
Yeah, but and certainly he's got the military might to be able to do it. Even though he's seems like he's really stumbled these first couple days, but it just comes down to what the international pressure is able to do. Do we keep ratcheting up the sanctions like we've been doing twice a day for the past 4 days? Finally, it wasn't complete blocking him from SWIFT, but this is one of the red lines that he set. If we blocked him out of SWIFT, that he would consider that an act of war. And
well, we blocked him off partially from SWIFT so we could make the headline.
Yeah, and we've done something which is not something that was expected. It was off the table initially. Now it's on the table. It's partially, but
you realize
we'll see where it goes from here.
You realize if we completely block Russia off internationally, they are basically a North Korea at that point. Do we want Putin in that sort of scenario?
Well, that's kind of the balancing act of, you want them to be. They have to be a part of the international kind of the global community, financially tied with other countries, for these sanctions to affect them. But if you completely cut them off from the global financial community, then the sanctions, I guess, I don't know what else. What can you do at that point? What else is going to happen?
You're appealing to Putin to care about the Russian people, which, I think he does.
Oh, I don't think I think he cares about the Russian people insofar as they allow him to maintain power. Insofar as they're not out completely, there's not general strikes. They're not making too much of a mess for him to where his domestic politics are difficult to deal with while he deals with his international affairs. But even in the oligarchs, the oligarchs, do they have all these blood and soul concerns and dreams of reuniting the Soviet Empire, or are they just ready to? They just want to. I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know any Russian oligarchs. I've never had the pleasure, but I imagine a lot of them just like being billionaires and jet setting and living the life, and I'm sure that I imagine that some of them were okay with this insofar as it was going to allow them to gain a lot of wealth. And if it looks like, hey, this is this is only going to be bad. We're not going to get the wealth from Ukraine that we were hoping we would, and we're getting completely cut off from all our wealth abroad, from the international community. Then when do they start making plans to, hey, Putin, you got to stop this, or hey, we got to get this crazy dude out of here?
That's not how they do it in Russia, bro. That's not how they do it.
Ask the Tsar about that.
Right. Ask Yevchenko. What's his name? These guys' name all sound the same. I believe.
I was listening to something. They were saying they were proposing that this was potentially the first climate war. They're talking about I don't know if it's $1 trillion or 1 trillion barrels of natural gas off of Crimea that everybody's kind of wanting to get their hands on, and Crimea is basically, there's no water on the peninsula, just marshy, salty everywhere, and the one bit of fresh water that goes to that region comes to this certain canal that comes from, I guess, Ukraine proper. And when Putin annexed Crimea, as the Ukraine's left, they basically just concreted this whole canal, and I don't know exactly what they cut off all the fresh water supplies to Crimea. And then 2020 was apparently the driest year on record in the region.
GOP division over Putin. Oh, this is RT. They're playing GOP stuff on RT.
Yeah, they're
Pro-Putin
playing Tucker on Russia Today.
They show all three of these. There's
President Donald Trump calling Vladimir Putin talented, savvy, a genius.
Very capable. I have enormous respect.
Mike Pompeo.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo praising Putin as a statesman.
Architect of the war in Afghanistan, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least the latter part.
Fox News' Tucker Carlson.
What is this really about? Why do I hate Putin so much? Has Putin ever called me a racist?
Former Secretary of State.
So the lies of Ukrainians, not relevant. What's relevant is whether or not I've been accused of racism lately. That's the real hard-hitting issues.
Yeah.
This is the big contradiction. Hillary Clinton talking about Putin is just gold. It's just talk about the rich fucks and the other rich fucks.
Hillary Clinton accusing them of aiding and abetting America's enemies.
We have to also make sure that within our own country, we are calling out those people who are giving aid and comfort to Vladimir Putin, who are talking about what a genius he is, what a smart move it is.
She's just playing politics there, obviously, going after Trump. You think she'll run again?
God.
It wouldn't surprise me, dude.
She is the most disgusting politician. It's just
she's more disgusting than Biden. Yeah.
Oh, she's the worst. I would have voted for when they thought it was going to be Romney and Clinton. I would have voted for Romney over Clinton just to send a message, just to let her know.
They literally made a Netflix show about her. It's called House of Cards, except the female lead is obviously way more charismatic than Hillary.
Yeah.
Our GOP leadership, and not just GOP leadership, but a lot of people are praising Putin in this invasion. That's interesting.
Yeah, is it? Is it? I mean, they love a strong man. They love a dictator. They love a fascist. They love power.
Well, a few days ago, they were they kept. If you watch the one of the interviews with the White House press secretary, what's her face? They kept asking her, Psaki bombs. They kept asking her, what about SWIFT? What about SWIFT? It's like they're trying so hard for escalation so they can get some more freaking media coverage. It's terrifying.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's just kind of how our media goes anyway. You know, the scarier it gets and the more happens, the more views they get. You know, it's.
You know, Putin, he wants to convert his military advantage into something more sustained for the Russian people. You know, he's a freaking patriot. I would love to learn more about the relationship between Putin and Yeltsin, because Putin is pretty anti-Yeltsin these days. I wonder how that developed. Maybe one day they'll do a good doc on it.
Behind the music.
All right. Yeah, nobody in the media is calling out the fact that his anti-democratic policies. For example, nobody's talking about the gay propaganda bill or some of these other anti-democratic policies he has.
I don't think there's any reason in the U.S. for our media to kind of even go after that narrative. You know, I think the general understanding in the U.S. is like he's dictator bad.
That's not very nuanced, though. I hate that.
Yeah, it's not nuanced, but if there's anything Americans hate, it's nuance. And, you know, we already have a good narrative, and it's mostly true. It is true, really. It is true. He's kind of a dictator from the last century that's bent on expanding the glory of the nation and the fatherland and all that crap. You know, you don't have to. I mean, the point behind he doesn't like gay people and he's anti-democratic is to demonize them, and he's already the demon in the eyes of most Americans. So it's a narrative that there's no reason to run with it.
I just want people to get a little bit more context so they can start digging into some of this history, man. It's fascinating. It would give so much more context to things that happen in the rest of the world, in Europe and the United States in particular, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier, but yeah, this is the first time I remember in my lifetime watching a war, an invasion at least, not a civil war, but an invasion from the point of view of the invadees. We don't ever get that. Typically, we're the ones invading. We saw, Iraq and Afghanistan from the point of view of the soldiers because we had embedded media. And at least in the case of Iraq, we didn't even see any graphic images. But with this, we're seeing everything except the actual fighting at the front lines. We don't get a peek at where things are located. I'm sure there's satellite footage of everything, but we won't find out till after the war, I imagine. I don't know. You could probably access some of it, but we don't see any combat on the front line in Kiev.
Yeah, there's very little. They're just I've seen like a handful of short clips that have come out, and I guess most of it seems to be from Ukrainian civilians. You know, there's really nothing coming out at least nothing I'm seeing on the Russian side, which I believe that they're barred from taping anything.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's like watching a movie, dude. Seeing it from the point of view of the people getting invaded. It's very interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is kind of why this invasion is so important. You know, it's not, these things don't happen in developed countries anymore. You know, to the extent that actual invasions for just to take over the land and not to just to oust somebody for some purpose or to whatever. It just doesn't happen in Europe. Yeah, it's a developed nation. It's in Europe and
heavy artillery.
Yeah, I mean, it just hadn't been seen in a long time, and this is kind of the effect of it. Is when it happens, you know, this is developed first world people with cameras and iPhones and access to the internet, and everything's going to be uploaded, and it's been pretty wild getting to see everything unfold.
So people are asking for RT and Sputnik to be canceled, just like Dave Chappelle. EU has announced a ban on RT and Sputnik. The U.S. has not, as far as I know. It was still up earlier today. RT America.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that
at all.
Like
RT America?
No, I don't. I don't like the idea of canceling those stations.
Really?
It just sets a bad precedent.
Well, it's not only state-owned media; it's also state-controlled media. That's sort of the problem.
No, I
get it. If it was just state-owned, I wouldn't have an issue.
Yeah, I get it. I don't know. Just run a banner over it constantly. This is all bullshit.
They do. YouTube does. Look, RT is funded in whole or part by the Russian government. If you go to Telesur, it says the same thing. It says
I've
Telesur is funded in whole or in part by the Latin American
Al Jazeera, DW is funded in
Germany.
whole or part by Germany and BBC, and yeah.
the difference is the editorial control, right? Not necessarily the ownership rights.
Sure. Yeah, it's not just who owns it. BBC, I don't think the British government is telling them what to say. They just fund it.
Yeah, it's still up. So yeah, they're claiming that all this is shelling by Ukrainians of Donbass. Headline is, Ukrainian military intensifies its artillery fire at residential areas.
Huh.
Now, why is he firing at why is the Ukrainian military firing at residential areas? Doesn't seem like a good idea.
It's all about that narrative, baby.
I mean, they're literally firing at their own people? That's strange.
They're evil. Nazis. He's got to denazify them.
The Chinese embassy in Russia has been throwing some heaters. I know you made a statement earlier about the Chinese position on this. I sort of disagree with you a little bit, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that the Chinese have been very neutral on this. Obviously, they're going to make some basic statement about how they respect territorial sovereignty and whatnot, which typically they have historically. I mean, now internally, their oppression, not great.
Well, I think the initial UN vote, I forget what it was about. There was an initial UN vote about condemning Russia's actions, and it was the Security Council, the permanent and the, I guess, non-permanent members, and it was basically pretty much everybody for condemning the actions. There was Russia and China against, and then there was like 3 countries abstaining. I think it was Gabon, India, and somebody else. I don't remember who the other one was. And then they had another vote yesterday or today, and China has now went from
Abstaining.
Voting with Russia to just abstaining.
Oh, really?
So that's kind of what I was basing it on.
Okay,
I mean, that's not very much. It's not very much.
The pretty neutral position.
Well, but it is a neutral position now, whereas before it was the position in favor of Russia, specifically in favor. They were voting with Russia. They are now abstaining from voting in favor of or against.
If the frickin' Russians and the Chinese both weren't so damn racist and had got along this whole time, imagine how powerful that bloc would be.
Oh, buddy.
That
would be scary. If the Chinese just went in whole hog with the Russians.
Hand in hand. I know, man.
Hand in hand. We're setting up a new economic bloc. Europe's going to die on the vine. U.S., you're out of luck, buddy.
So here's from the Chinese embassy in Russia. Never forget who's the real threat to the world. It has a list of U.S. bombings from 53 to 2015. The Democracy World Tour. They have good propaganda in China, dude. You ever follow their social media? It's pretty good.
No, I never have.
Korea,
I've seen
Guatemala,
this,
Indonesia, Cuba, Guatemala, again, Congo, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Guatemala, again, Grenada, Lebanon, Libya, Salvador.
Guatemala needs to learn their lesson.
I know, right?
Jesus.
She got 2 black eyes because I told her twice. How does it go? Is that close?
Something like that, yeah.
Panama, Iraq, Kuwait, Somalia, Bosnia, Sudan, Afghanistan, Yugoslavia, Yemen, Iraq. U.S./UK on regular basis, in parentheses. True facts during like the Clinton administration and all the way up till Iraq, the invasion years, Afghanistan invasion years, Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, Libya. Most recent bombing, Syria, 2014 and 2015. So this is pretty accurate. Some of these are all not, obviously, this similar situation, but Chinese embassy in Russia from the 25th. Among the 248 armed conflicts that occurred in 153 regions across the world from 1945 to 2001, 201 were initiated by the U.S., accounting for 81% of the total number. They have a nice pie graph here.
Very nice
all the
pie
wars.
graph.
Throwing heaters, man. Chinese embassy in Russia, 25th again. A key question here is what role the U.S., the current culprit of tensions surrounding Ukraine, has played. So the Chinese embassy in Russia is not being neutral whatsoever here, obviously. There's a nice meme of Uncle Sam's putting gas on a fire. It says Ukraine, and he's saying Uncle Sam's trying to put out this fire with the gasoline, and while he's doing that, he's saying, "Why can't China do more to help put out the fire?"
I guess this is where Aaron Mate's been getting his talking points.
Pretty much, yeah. They have good propaganda, man. The social media wise, I mean, our good propaganda is really like Tucker Carlson, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we got good propaganda.
They have good social media propaganda like this.
I don't know. There's been
Facebook
some fantastic
memes, but
I was going to say some fantastic memes, just all around. I mean, I think I'll link something. Well, the Ghost of Kiev. I'm all aboard. I'm a believer.
Oh God, you're so optimistic. I'm gonna feel so bad when they lop off his head, dude. You know it's coming. He's gonna say, "No, I'm not signing your deal," and then they cut off his head. And then the next lowest people, they ask them, "Do you want to sign?" And they say no, and they lop off their heads. And then it goes to the next lowest people, and eventually somebody will sign. That's how they do it in Mother Russia.
I watched Braveheart too many times as a kid to not have that ingrained in my head as how things are going to play out. The Ghost of Kiev is going to fly in right as Zelensky's up there, and they're, "Do you confess?" And he just
the narrative around Zelensky is pretty epic.
Oh, he's become a legend. He is a legend. I mean, obviously, a lot of it's propaganda, but is it though? Like, really? He did stay there. I'm sure he's not out on the front lines fighting with the troops, but does it matter? He's there. He's out talking with the people. It's refreshing to see that from a leader, I guess. I feel like he has conviction.
He did a few movies.
Yeah. Now he's given moral support to and given hope to his people, and it honestly is like he's given hope and courage to his people by being there and by inspiring them. I think he's kind of inspired the entire world really, and gotten everybody on board with his honest to God bravery. I mean, staying there, he could have left. And those great zingers he's come up with. I don't need a ride, I need ammunition. Come on,
epic. Plus all the shots of him like in fatigues and
fatigues walking by. Yeah. Oh, looks it's.
Can you imagine Biden?
Yeah. You imagine Trump? There's something else that showed Zelensky wearing like the armor and something like, "I didn't have bone spurs," or "I'm not worried about bone spurs." Shot at Trump with his bone spurs.
I love it. It's just like I always knew in real life there was pure evil, the bad guy, Putin, and then there's the hero, Zelensky.
It's a good guy. This Jordan Peterson narratives. These are the narratives.
Yep. Right. It's idealism, Tony. So this is a protest in D.C. from today. D.C. against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Protesting in D.C. Looks like a lot of these guys are actually Ukrainian, American. I don't know, man. This makes me very nervous. This seems dangerous to me. What are they protesting for? What do they want the U.S. to do is my question. What are they protesting for?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of another big component of this. The propaganda has been so effective, and it's gotten so many people in the West really on board with the whole, we got to support Ukraine, we got to do something, we got to go there. Zelensky's up against the wall, and the lions are at the gate. They're surrounding Kiev. We have to, this is a Thermopylae moment, and we have to go help them. And it's like,
Putin,
what are we going to do?
He's lost his mind. He's going crazy.
But like, what are we going to do? If Putin has lost his mind, or if he has become a little bit erratic, like I think at the very least there's some evidence to. I would say there's definitely some evidence to show that he's not acting rationally.
I would recommend to anyone who hasn't to read or listen to his most recent speech. It's pretty frank and earnest. His most recent one after it was like 2 days ago.
Okay,
night before last.
probably at least heard part of it. But I'm just saying, what I was getting at was, like, I feel like this is a tightrope. You know, we might not, I'm sure we're not close, but we are closer to a nuclear exchange than we need to be. You know, we just, everybody needs to be calmed down when you're dealing with tensions between two nuclear armed countries going to war. And, you know, I don't know. My point was, like, there's a lot of people out there protesting, you know, we need to go over there, we need to do this, and we need to do that, and we need to, basically, I have seen a lot of people advocating that actions be taken that would kind of unequivocally be considered acts of war against Russia. And it's just, you know, it's a bit of a scary time, and really we do need to kind of tread lightly, and this is kind of a needle that needs to be threaded on how to effectively deal with Putin without escalating tensions into a NATO, you know, European conflict or conflict with the U.S. directly.
Honestly, I'm more concerned about the Europeans than the Americans. Like, refusing Russian ships from docking could easily turn into blowing up Russian ships or killing Russian soldiers or sailors, or it creates a feeding frenzy, and then they smell blood in the water, and then every hawk in the world wants to invade Russia.
So there was
like a fucking pumpkin. Just
today, there was a fellow who was a Ukrainian citizen that sank one of the Russian. He worked for one of the Russian oligarchs and worked on his yacht, and he sank his yacht, just kind of as his own personal act of protest. And he was arrested for it. But something like that, some big act could happen by an individual. Then you get a protest about that. Yeah, you know, an individual could set something off. You know, an individual could blow up a ship, or some group. Hey, we're gonna push back against Russia in our own way, and blow up a container ship, and that could really, you know, set off an international conflict.
I wonder if like all the neo-Nazi groups in Europe are supporting the Ukrainians in this conflict. I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's probably just however they identify, you know, whatever their nationalistic tendencies are. You know, I don't know, from what I've seen, as far as like on the anti-Semitism, Ukraine seems to be one of the least anti-Semitic countries.
Well, I'm more concerned with countries like Germany, dude.
Yeah.
And a ton of something to galvanize the right around, right? And there's a lot of popular support as well for this issue.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have an obvious target to other. It's not even black people this time. It's Russians.
Yeah. It's a scary time, man. Like, there's so many. It would have almost been safer had, at least in the short to medium term, if the invasion had went as planned over the first couple of days. Within 2 or 3 days, he was in Kiev. Troops were in place. New government in. Everybody calms down. Nothing happened. Just come in here. It was a peacekeeping mission. But the prolonged conflict like this is where things aren't going the way they should have. Like, it's kind of what I imagine this wasn't really planned for as much as a quick victory, and you know, then we just let the dust settle afterwards. And the ability for something to go off script like this is kind of where it's a little bit nerve-wracking to me, I guess. You know, this is where the potential for real escalation of violence occurs. So a random guy on Twitter that I was reading right before here, who I'm sure has excellent information, was was suggesting. So I guess
TikTok. That's where you get your information from, Tony.
All of it, obviously. But no. So Belarus apparently is considering becoming a non-neutral state in regards to nuclear weapons. I guess Putin is considering moving some of his nuclear deterrent into Belarus. for whatever reason. And, I guess there were suggestions that, well, once they were there, maybe this is the speculation part. Maybe the Belarusians, maybe they could be used from Belarus, so that Belarus would be the fall guy for having used them. If they were to be used, that would be the scenario in which they would be used. Well, they were moved to Belarus. It must have been some breakaway in Belarus or some crazy people in that shithole country. Europe can blame them because they don't want to put the blame on Russia, because that means a bigger conflict.
Russia could make the same argument we made in World War II. It's going to end the war quicker, right? Let's drop one nuke and it's all over.
They could. I don't think that holds any water because, back then we were the only one with the nukes, and quite a few people have them nowadays.
Well, not Ukraine.
No, not Ukraine. What would happen? All right, I'm going to give you a scenario right now. Putin doesn't fold to the international pressure. So you're right about that. He doesn't fold. He's got his war chest. He has his little deals he has going with China. He's got people that are going to buy his oil, so he's going to have the money continue coming in. He's playing for all this stuff. But the massive amount of arms and the resolve of the great Ukrainian people under their fearless leader, Zelensky, have halted his nefarious attacks. Putin sends some nuclear armaments to Belarus, and he ends up setting up a warning shot. I'm going to detonate a nuke somewhere near enough to Kiev, but not within Kiev to work. So I don't want to mess up any infrastructure. But I'm going to shoot this nuke off into the country. This is your shot. This is your warning shot. In the most that I'm as serious as it possibly gets. What does the international community do? 20 miles outside of Kiev, in some rural area, a medium-grade nuclear weapon goes off. We all see the mushroom cloud. Zelensky is told you have 24 hours to surrender your government, to surrender Kiev, or that's happening right in Independence Square in Kiev.
Well, you just send the ghost up there to take out the nuclear, the launch pads.
Yeah, obviously. I'm saying, but maybe the ghost was refueling in that field where the nuke was dropped.
Now, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
This scenario will never happen, man. Like I said, Putin has barely used any of his force. He was hoping for a quick surrender from Zelensky. Zelensky obviously is not going to fold that easily. Eventually it will happen, though. He used a tiny portion of his force to try to get a quick surrender or some sort of agreement of neutrality out of Zelensky. Zelensky's not going for it. He'll up it. But, he doesn't want to destroy the infrastructure, obviously, but he will if he has to. He has a ton of missiles, dude. He has barely used any of his missile might. I promise you. He could have flattened Kiev in 5 minutes if he wanted to. That's not his intention. Mm-hmm. Putin is not an idiot, and he's not crazy. He knows what he's doing, man. I think he underestimated Germany's response, for sure. I feel like he thought he had some prearranged agreement with them over Ukraine. I'm not sure. Maybe he misread that, but he fired one of his generals, right, sort of to take the fall for.
Yeah, the head of his general staff for the army, the guy who basically kind of created the modern Russian army. He got rid of him. This guy had been around since 1991 in government. So ever since the Russian Federation had started, this guy was a part of the military, part of helping form it. I forget the guy's name. I was just reading about him earlier. But he was the fall guy. So you don't put any stock into kind of just a logistical nightmare.
No, absolutely not. How's a logistical nightmare?
Well, I'm saying
they have the country surrounded.
The actual logistics of it, getting food, fuel, getting
Russia
access,
has a ton of fuel, dude. There is no issue with fuel from Russia.
Okay. And then, I guess kind of the other big thing is just the morale, the troops not wanting to go there, not caring about even fighting. I mean, that
not wanting to kill other Russians.
Not wanting to go in there and kill Ukrainians or Russians, people that are they're right next. I mean, I don't get it. I would love to kill Canadians, but maybe over there it's different. Maybe they don't want to kill their neighbors.
Well, they used to be part of the same country not that long ago for most of the 1900s. Yeah, morale's not great, but they have a huge army. You don't have to have a superior number of high morale individuals. You just have to have enough alive at the end.
Well, I guess the idea that I had was, it's if they don't have the morale to kind of push the fight like they need to, if there's a resistance at a certain bridge, how hard are the guys that are supposed to push through that bridge gonna care about doing it? Are they gonna retreat? If there's any fire coming back at them, or are they going to be rabid like the army of the Russian army of World War II, where we're just gonna into the breach, into the fire, take the bridge at all cost?
That's definitely plays a factor, man. You never have the as high of a morale when you're the invading country as the defenders do.
Sure, and especially not in this day and age where everybody's connected to the internet, and as much as Russia is trying to control the narrative, as much as they control the television stations, they don't control the internet. They don't control Facebook. They don't control whatever the Russian Reddit is.
Sure. I don't think it matters, though. They're so superior, it doesn't matter. And people, if you're getting shot at, you'll shoot back. It doesn't matter. It makes a difference, but it's not going to make a difference in the outcome of the war. There's just there is no ability to defend themselves, really. It's just a matter of how much force does Putin want to use to try and accomplish this goal. Will he give up on the goal? Because he doesn't have to. He can 100% win this war. Mm-hmm. Even as we discussed, he could move nukes and have a large number of tactical nukes. That's why they have such a large total number of nukes, because a lot of them are these tactical nukes.
Yeah.
Which are smaller
low-grade
weapons.
Bunker busters. And, not city destroyers. They're just the lower grade, take out a few city blocks or take out a bunker.
Guess we'll find out, man.
Yeah,
it'll be fun to watch. In a horrifying, slow train wreck kind of way.
Either Ukraine becomes part of Russia, or there's going to be a bunch of sunflowers growing next year.
I hope you're right. I don't know, man. I hope this deal goes through and there's no more fighting. How about that?
I don't know. It's made for some great television. Keep it going so we can be entertained over here.
Well, I guess we just had a Ukraine special. That's kind of what I expected, man. There's a lot to talk about with this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, is there anything else worth talking about, like I say? So,
there is, but...
there definitely is. Absolutely.
This could be the beginning of the end of the world, so maybe we should cover it.
Yeah. I mean, this is certainly the closest we've been, I would think, to I don't think we're close, but we are closer to a nuclear exchange than we've been since the 60s.
That's all I got, man.
All right. Sounds good. It'd be a few hours and market's open. We'll see how bad the ruble is crashed. Bausch seems to think that's what's gonna do it. That's gonna be the beginning of the end.
Doesn't matter.
Ruble's gonna crash, go to nothing. And
do you know how many diamonds they have in frickin' Russia? How much oil?
When the nukes crystallize everything and turn everything into diamonds, blowing everything to pieces. But, all right, yeah, man. Fun times. We'll see how it goes. I'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Later, man.